Somebody gave me a lawnmower to play with. It's getting a no spark. It's a Honda. All these Honda mowers are pretty much the same. They're pretty easy to figure out if they don't run. If it don't run, the first thing you want to do is you want to take this filter off on these Honda mowers. You want to squirt something flammable in here, like some junk like this, carburetor cleaner, or some more carburetor cleaner, or some brake cleaner. If you use brake cleaner is fine, but if it's non-flammable, you can't use it. Most of it is flammable. Even this junk, I think, is flammable. Anything flammable, pretty much. Stick it in the hole. You could put some gas in there too. It's kind of hard to get it in there. You'd have to squirt it in there somehow. Then just crank it over and see if it runs. Because if it does, then you know your carburetor's plugged up, and you gotta clean your carburetor out. If you gotta do that, you gotta take the carburetor out and clean it. But in this case, I got a no spark. So what I did was I actually took this top off. There's 3 bolts. You pull this thing out of the way, and you can disconnect this wire. You got a little micro switch down here. You can unplug this, because if it's unplugged, then your system is not going to be grounded, and it should run with it unplugged. The only problem is you won't be able to kill the motor, which is fun. So I unplugged this and I got a no spark. You could ohm out the coil if you want. These things got so many different values, they're frickin' retarded. So I didn't bother. I pulled this spark out and I grounded it out and cranked it over, and I was getting a no spark, and I unplugged this and I was still getting a no spark, so I just got a coil. And sometimes these aren't grounded real good either. These two spots right here, you got to make sure they're grounded really nice, and there's no real rust on here or anything. So what I did was I just looked at the part number here, and I looked at the model number here, and then I got a coil for it. You go online, they're like 12 bucks. This one's kind of broke, but I don't know, probably from the mail packaging. That don't matter though, because that side's not being used. And I'm going to put this coil on here, and this thing's going to run. Now what you want to do with these, if you're going to be replacing a coil because it's got a no spark, these are the bolts for it. You want to take and you want to just file this down nice and flat. You want to do this just to make sure it's got a nice grounding surface and it's nice and flat. Okay. And it's fine. You know, if there's any corrosion or anything on here, you want to lift all that off. And it looked good to begin with, but I just do that just to make sure. Put the coil back on. Yeah, I think this bolt here is like a 9mm and this one's a 10. It's weird. What you want to do, you need to gap this coil. It's supposed to be 0.010 of an inch. You can use a feeler gauge if you want. But basically, if you just take regular printer paper and fold it in half, that's about 7 or 8 thousandths of an inch. So that's what you call good enough. The good enough stuff. So you just push up against it and just kind of snug it down until you get them both on there. They're probably about, I would say, 8 foot-pounds. You don't want to get them too tight. You want to plug this wire back in. And then what you want to do too is you want to turn this and you want to make sure the crankshaft's not bent or anything. So you just kind of want to check it and make sure it doesn't touch. Feels real nice. Okay, I'm just going to put this back on. There's a little groove. There's a little groove right here that the wire fits in. You want to make sure that's lined up. And there's a groove on the other side for that wire. Just pull on this rope to get them splines to line up. And you got 3 10mm bolts here. I'm going to turn the fuel on because I turned it off before. Make sure it's getting gas. It came in with a replaced spark plug too, so the guy said it didn't work, and he put a spark plug in it and it still didn't work. So I can pretty much rule that one out. Okay, I tightened them 3 bolts now. Now I get to cross my fingers and make sure this runs. Now I can go test this baby out on my lawn.